Welcome back to lesson 2.2. We are going to continue looking at another form of writing the equation of a line, as well as looking at parallel and perpendicular lines. So this third version we looked at is going to be called standard form. And standard form, I think, is generally looked at as people's least favorite out of the three. However, I really like it because it allows us to find something a little different. What it doesn't show, it doesn't give us any immediate graphable information, whereas like slope-intercept, we have the slope, we have the y-intercept, and point-slope form, we have a point and the slope. We can't look at this and say, oh, this represents the slope. We don't have that in this. We can very easily calculate the x and the y-intercepts. So think about where the x and y-intercepts are on a graph. If I were to draw a graph and then put a line on it, think about those points. This is my x-intercept. What's my value of y here? If I think about my my y-intercept, what's my x-coordinate here? It doesn't really matter what my x value is for the x-intercept. The y value is always going to be 0. Any point that I put along the x-axis is going to have a y-coordinate of 0. And any value that I put on the y-axis is going to have an x-coordinate of 0. Doesn't really matter what that second number is. So the way that we're going to do this is set x equal to 0, and then set y equal to 0. And when we plug in x equals 0 and then y equals 0, that'll give us our two intercepts. Don't worry if you aren't with me so far, that's okay, we're going to practice. But first, let's just see how could we find the slope of a line from this. And let's pretend that I didn't make a mistake and actually had a y there to begin with. All right, so I want to get y by itself. So I'm going to subtract 7x to both sides. And I would get negative 2y equals negative 7x plus 14. And then I need to divide everything by negative 2. And I'm going to get y equals 7/2 x. Two negatives make this become positive, and then this would be minus 7. So that's the equation of the line, but what it's asking me for is the slope. Do you remember which number represents slope? It's this one. This is our slope. It's the number that is being multiplied by x. So we would say that our slope is 7/2. All right. So now let's practice with these x and y intercepts. Oh, I did it again. Good grief. Okay. Find the x and y intercepts. So for the x-intercept, and y-intercept, I'm going to say x equals 0 and y equals 0. So this is for my y-intercept and my x-intercept. All right, so if I plug in x equals 0, I get 5 times 0 plus 6y equals 18. And this is what's great about this, is that really by plugging in 0, that's going to cancel out. And all I have to do is divide by 6 on both sides. Over here, I'm going to have 5x plus 6 times 0 equals 18. Again, that cancels, and I can divide both sides by 5. And we get x equals 18 over 5. So I want to write these, though, as ordered pairs. For my y-intercept, I know that y equals 3, but that was when x was 0. So I'm going to have this point, and I can graph that, 0, 3. And then this point is 18 over 5, 0. So 18 over 5 would be 3 point something, because 5 goes into 18 3 times with a remainder. And so it's going to look something like this. And here's what's beautiful. I can graph this line by connecting those two dots. And with standard form, it is not required that we know what the slope is. Now we could figure it out by looking at our graph, but we don't have to know it. And so it's okay with standard form to just graph 2 points and connect them. Write the equation of the line that has a slope of -3 and passes through the point -7, 3 in standard form. Okay, so I'm going to start with this in point slope form because I know what my slope is and I have a point. So it makes sense to put it into this form. Why can't I just immediately put it into standard form? Well, I can't put it into standard form because none of these really have meaning until we find some values. I have no place to put in slope. I could put in x and y, but then I still have 3 variables to solve for, so it wouldn't really be effective. But if I plug in these values, it's going to look like this. Y minus 3 equals, my slope is -3, and then x minus -7. So y minus 3 equals -3 times x plus 7. But I can actually take this a step further, and I can go ahead and distribute, because I want it, standard form means it looks like this, where x and y are on the same side. So I'm going to get x and y on the same side. Y minus 3 equals -3x minus 21. I'm moving this 3x to the other side. We do like our x's to be positive. So it's better to move the 3x over here than to move the y. I'm also going to go ahead and move the 3 over to this side. So 3x plus y equals -18, and that would be my final answer because x and y are on the same side and the constant is on the opposite side. All right, so parallel and perpendicular lines. 2 lines are said to be parallel if their slopes are the same. So if we think about this, if I have 2 lines, these are parallel, they're never going to touch. I could say that this has a slope of 3/2. That means that this one also has a slope of 3/2. The slopes have to be exactly the same. It can't be even a little bit off. And 2 lines are said to be perpendicular if their slopes are opposite reciprocals. And what happens when we graph these is that if we look at the angles in between, it should make a 90-degree angle. But if this is a slope of 1/4, then when I draw the perpendicular slope, it should be a slope of -4/1. So for example, I had 3/2 and 3/2. Over here I had 1/4 and -4. If you want to think about it as 4/1, you can, but we don't have to write the over 1. So, some special slopes to think about. A horizontal line can be written as y equals a, where a is a constant. So thinking about if I just had the equation y equals 3, what that means is that if I look at my graph, I would say, okay, I'm going to 1, 2, 3, and it's going to be a horizontal line going through this point. And it has a slope of 0 because I'm not rising any. It would just, the slope would be 0 over however many spaces you move, but 0 divided by anything is 0. So whenever we see an equation where it says just y equals a number, horizontal line, the way that I remember it is that whatever variable is by itself, if there's only one, that's the axis it crosses. And it can't cross the y-axis vertically. That doesn't make sense. A vertical line, oops. If I draw a vertical line, ooh, that's a bad vertical line, can be written as x equals a. So maybe this is x equals 5, but the slope is undefined because now I'd be saying if I go from like here to here, I'm saying my slope is 4/0. I can't divide by 0. So an x equals a constant means a vertical line. Slope is undefined. Find the parallel and perpendicular slopes to the line 3x plus 2y equals 6. I'm going to solve for y so that I can find my slope first. And so I'm going to get divide by 2 for everything. and we're going to get y equals -3/2 x plus 3. So again, where's my slope? It is here, -3/2. So we are going to use this slope to find the parallel and the perpendicular slopes. I had to go back to the directions there for a second. So for parallel, I'm going to say if the slope is -3/2, it has to stay exactly the same. Over here, over here we had exactly the same. They didn't change. But for perpendicular, not only did we flip the fraction, we also changed the sign. So when we go to write the perpendicular slope, I'm going to say I'm starting with -3/2. So the first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, it has to be positive, and then I'm going to flip the fraction. It is an opposite reciprocal. So the opposite would be 2/3. Last one, write the equation of the line that passes through the point 8, 3 and is perpendicular to the line y equals -1/2 x plus 22. All right, so when you see a problem like this and it just says write the equation of the line, it doesn't say in slope-intercept, it doesn't say in standard form, you get to pick. But let's start with, we need to know what the slope is. I know that it's perpendicular to this, but the only thing that this line really is important for, I don't care about this or the rest of this, I care about the slope. So I would have to say my slope is perpendicular to -1/2, so I'm going to make it positive, change the sign, and flip that fraction, so it's going to be 2. Now I know slope, I know a point. I'm going to call this x1 and y1, and I'm going to write the equation. Y minus y1, which is 3, equals our slope times x minus x1, which is 8. And again, it didn't say what form. If you want to change it, you can, but that one requires the least amount of work. And so if it doesn't specify, you get to pick. If you have any questions about this, please let me know. But I hope this has been a good little refresher on graphing these equations of lines, writing equations of lines, and also parallel and perpendicular slope.